The large transport moved through space in FTL. They headed towards the training grounds, which in human speak is simply a school or high school. The potential students on board were all either in their pubescent years or just about ready to leave said pubescent years. This was noted especially with their nonchalant attitude that every species seems to have at this point. The shuttle itself is actually quite large, about 5 times the size of a commercial supertanker, which made enough room for everyone to spread out if they needed to, spread their wings literally, stretch their tails if they needed, or whatever it might be. As they were traveling along, the teacher in charge decided to address the student body, ushering them all into the dining hall so she could speak to all of them. She tried to get their attention several times, but they wouldn't shut up, and eventually she slammed her tail down on the deck very hard. This surprised them all, as this was a clear threat from her species. She finally got their attention and said, "We know that rumor is that humans are to be on board, the new species that you've all heard about. I am now going to tell you whether the rumor is true or not. This rumor is true." With this, all the humans seemed to groan in their own particular way, or roll their eyes in their particular way, whether that be flicking their tails, or fluttering their wings, flipping antennae, or in some cases, quite literally face-palming. While doing so, they kept saying how they don't want to deal with a Stone Age species. Around all their cultures, this is considered a very strong insult because any species that doesn't have a high enough technology level is considered inadequate, inept, and completely incapable of understanding anything. And as that's the case, they would be absolutely, totally useless and more of a hamper to them. The teacher once again slammed her tail down, and this got their attention in a big way because once is a pay attention. Second is I'm about to come and bite your damn head off. And they were all focusing forward. The teacher then explained how humans had reached a technology level where they could actually finally control their physical age. Not their actual numerical age, of course, but their physical age. This surprised the students as they didn't understand how this could even be done. Well, humans might surprise everybody, they thought. She then went on to explain, as though that the humans may appear young, the humans will actually be similar in age to the students. And this shocked everyone. Everyone believed that humanity had a very, very short lifespan compared to the rest, and for a long time this was true. But now they've been able to adjust their DNA so that they constantly regenerate and rejuvenate. This means that they all look very young. And this also allows them the time to study, to expand their knowledge and become more than they were. With this revelation, the teacher simply states, "Are there any questions?" One student fluttered their wings and then raised them sideways. This was their way of saying, "Yes, I do." She called on the student, and the student asked about the rumors about the humans having a very warm heart. This, in their own way of speaking, was saying how humans were kind and gentle, not too dissimilar to what humans would say. The teacher almost grinned at this, and simply stated that humans are very polite, extremely so, and they pair and pack bond extremely easily. And they seem to care about those inside their pack to the point of defending them to their own detriment. It would be of your best interest to become friends with them if all possible. Many of the students scoffed at this idea. Then another teacher jumped in and said, "There may be a bit of confusion in this statement." The first teacher, a little annoyed that somebody was trying to speak over her, understood that what was about to be said needed to be said, so she didn't push it any further. The second teacher said, "Humans, well, they are also known by their scientific name, which is Homo sapiens." This got a few laughs, as the word sapiens was kind of a slang. She continued with, "There's also the fact that they're homeothermic. With this, all the students froze. They didn't even believe what they just heard. This can't be possible. They're no longer laughing as they begin to freak out, not understanding how this is possible. They were all looking at each other with complete and total shock. Some of them dropped a couple of scales, many of them their spikes raised. Some of those with feathers simply flailed them out in a sign of absolute shock and dismay. The first teacher chimed back in, saying, "As you know, humans come from a death world. This death world has multiple climates, unlike our planets. To survive on said death world, they have to create their own body heat. This should not surprise anyone at all because you knew this was going to come around. It is just like the slatist creating their own bioluminescence," waving her claw to point at them, and then swinging over to the next species, "and just as the tixet and their vibrant feathers. No other species has those. Humans seem to pump out a lot of heat to maintain themselves in this. The average is about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees centigrade. Everyone realizing this begins to freak out. Everyone starts looking at each other. "It's so hot. What the, how can, this isn't possible. How the," they couldn't wrap their brains around it, as this would be the only species they've ever come across that's homeothermic. The teacher continued by saying, "It is not anything to worry about, as the humans find our environments quite comfortable, but require a temperature change every 24 hours. This is something to help them regulate their own body heat, as well. When we get into our anatomy class, you'll see that they are quite different." With this, the students are even more shocked at hearing this. How is this possible? How have they not heard about this before? All they heard is that the human heart was so warm, i.e., that they're so kind. And apparently, when they were first met, the humans were very polite, trying their best not to insult, even offering things that surprised everybody, like food. Usually, this is something that's held back, as food is always precious with large populations, but it seems as though this is a human custom. Everyone thought, well, someone's taken advantage of, but what the heck is going on? They didn't have time to think about it, as the ship slowed down to begin its docking procedures. Everyone ran or slithered or flew straight to their seats and got locked in. They eventually docked with a human ship, and everyone watched. Everyone wanted to get up and be there when the humans walked in, but they had to wait, and suspense was killing them, and only a few murmurs were heard. "What are they like? Have you ever seen one?" Only pictures, maybe one or two videos, but that was it. They weren't something that anyone really cared about. And eventually, the door opened into the crew compartment and the humans walked in. Everyone was surprised. They're bipedal and walking with a certain grace. And yet there was differences with all of them. Differences in attire, complexion, amount of fur. Not a stitch of uniformity between them outside the required collar that all students must wear to show their rank. The collar is required because not all species actually have appendages to lock them onto. Without saying a word, the humans are ushered to their seats, scattered around. Each one seems to be separated from the others, as though everyone's worried that if humans stay in a pack, they would be dangerous or something. But the humans seem to not care. Nonchalantly, they went and sat in their very plush seats, seats designed to be universal for every single species, and then immediately reach over and start turning the heaters off. The heaters were required, of course, because everyone else was cold-blooded. They just couldn't handle it. The only thing the humans ever said was, "Ooh, that's warm." Once everybody had fastened their restraints, they disconnected from the human ships, and pretty soon they were back in FTL space. An announcement came across that due to this being the last stop before they reached the training grounds, They need to match the planetary rotation. For that reason, for the next 6 hours, the lights would be out to allow everyone to get some sort of rest and to settle in. The humans seemed extremely comfortable and simply snuggled themselves deeper into the cushion and seemed to want to fall asleep very quickly. But those next to the humans seemed to move closer now that their interest was piqued. They would get closer and closer, sometimes asking the humans a couple questions, and throughout the flight, each human is asked if they were truly homeothermic. Of course, they answered yes, but were confused at this question. They didn't understand the significance of it. And the students started to ask if they could test the humans' heat. This confused the hell out of humans because they're like, what are you talking about? Especially the female humans seemed very, very apprehensive about this and simply curled up inside their plush seats and seemed to want no one to touch them at first until it was explained that just holding someone's hand was enough, even just pulling up a pant leg and letting them feel what was going on. The humans didn't understand, but you know what? Everyone's a little curious here, and the fact that these are basically teenagers by galactic standards, yeah, they'll let them figure out a little bit of their own curiosity. Upon arrival into the system, the lights are elevated back on, and the teachers go to make sure everyone is awake, but they're absolutely shocked at what they've seen. Each human in their own little area is absolutely cocooned, covered in other students. Some of them wrapped around appendages of the torso, some of them laying on top, others curled up underneath one of the human's arms. However, each of the human had made sure that their face was completely uncovered. The first teacher reached for the first human that they found to try to get the students away, but the students kept trying to say how they were tired and how they didn't want to leave, constantly saying, so warm. It was strange. The second teacher that had spoken finds one of the humans with his free arm holding one of the females on his chest. The teacher turns and tries to remove the female from the human, but she wouldn't let go. The teacher constantly saying, how unprofessional. Ugh. The human male simply looks up, realizing her distress and her discomfort with the situation. The human simply raises his hand and in motion that says, hold on, wait a minute. And he simply states, don't worry, I'll remove them. He grabs the teacher's arm that's still constantly trying to push the student away. The teacher is amazed as the heat radiates up the arm and all the way down her tail and even down her tendrils. It was intoxicating for her to feel that heat flow through her body. It was intoxicating for sure, but very, very brief, as the human was simply removing her hand. Realizing what was going on, all the humans began to stand up to try and remove those that had curled up next to them, curled up, crawled up, slithered up, or whatever. And yet, the teachers were amazed that the humans stood up without any difficulty as the other students refused to let go. Some of the humans standing there making a strange sound that they realized the humans were laughing at the situation. Yet the teachers were not laughing. They were actually amazed, believed that the humans were showcasing their surprising strength as they seemed to lift up so many kilos worth of students. It was absolutely crazy. The humans then began to peel off each student very, very carefully, as almost like it was practiced, like they had dealt with creatures before that didn't want to let them go. The humans, once they get some of the students off, take very deep breaths as though they had been held just a little too tight. In one case, the human male simply pulled one of the reptilians off his torso and went, oh, air. Whew. As the alien students begin to find their consciousness once the heat has started to leave their body, others begin to make fun of them for latching on to the humans so tight and not wanting to let go even though it's subconscious. Jokes continue all the way from the shuttle itself into the opening ceremonies, where the teachers can see the students instinctively leaning towards the humans that were sitting by. It was weird to see, as the humans seemed completely oblivious to this, but any other student around them would just slowly be leaning towards them more and more and more. She thought for a moment, looking at her appendage where the human had grabbed her, and she thought about the heat and how it was so intoxicating. Human warmth might be dangerous, she thought to herself, as she found out that it wasn't just intoxicating, it was almost addicting. Then she noticed a Russell like herself reach out with a tendril underneath the seats, down where no one else could see, well, unless they were standing up where she was, above them all. And it seemed to wrap the tendril around where the leg was, not quite touching it, but just close enough where the radiated heat of the human was still being felt. Then the tendril itself of the Russell began to change color ever so slightly. The teacher understood this as, well, this color was usually during certain periods of the year, and it indicated a certain level of, shall we say, impropriety. She began to wonder to herself, and also talk to the main teacher next to her. They wondered to each other if the humans' warm hearts would bring the universe closer together or tear it apart, because it seems to be doing both. It seems as though some of the students that had been latched on to the humans were actually fighting for a seat next to them. They didn't know. Regardless, these humans are going to be coveted from every single species from here on out. They talked to each other and thought, hey, it should make things an interesting cycle, as the humans will be here for another 2 solar cycles. That would be 751 human days. Realizing this, the first teacher looked to the second and said, well, at least this cycle will be interesting. Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you so much for joining me on today's story. Before I go, I need to send out a giant thank you to one of my supporters. That would be Sir. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And everybody else, I will see you on the next one. This is Syntax, ejecting.